I was in Bullock's one day in the men's department, just standing next to a counter like this, and a lady came by and she said, "Excuse me, where is your underwear?" And so I showed her. Speaking of DVDs, obviously DVDs are in, my career is out. It's pretty much over for me. I'm out in the valley now just peeling soft-boiled eggs and waiting for the big one. But I had a marvelous career. I would not have changed a moment of it. When I was in high school, I weighed 95 pounds. The coach made me a guard on the football team, which should give you an idea of his intelligence. And I wanted to be a jockey, which is the truth. I was galloping horses in Cleveland, and I wanted to be a jockey. And had it not been for the fact that I was terrified of horses and fell off a lot, I could have been probably a world-class jockey. Then I went to Bowling Green State University to college. Then I went into the Army. I defended Seattle in 1956 through 1958. The Army is kind of a stickler on having your gun with you. It's some attachment they have for that. I was on guard duty at 2 o'clock in the morning, and a lieutenant comes around every 2 hours. And I had left my gun in the back of a Buick because I was asleep. So when he came to check to see if I was on guard duty, I didn't have my rifle. And I knew that he'd be testy about that. So I reached in a dumpster and took out one of those long fluorescent tubes, light bulbs. And as he approached me, I said, "Halt, advance and be recognized." And he gave me his name and all of that business. And he looked down and he said, because I was holding this on him at the time, "What is that?" And I said, "It's a light bulb, and if you come any closer, I'll turn it on." And I went from there to painting rocks. And there were a bunch of rocks over here, and I would paint them and then put them over there for a long time, long time. And there were other occasions along the way that led me to believe that the Army does not have a sense of humor, although I had one. It's conflict. My parents were amusing. My father came over as an immigrant when he was 18 from Ireland. He was an amusing guy, but didn't know it. My parents both were. My dad put for instance, a doorbell in our house. This is the God's truth. A doorbell in our house one time backwards. So he crossed the wires so that it rang all the time, except when you pressed the doorbell. So we would sit at home at night and listen to this, and I would say to my dad, "I think the wires are crossed. I think maybe you should leave it alone." So, now, when it would stop, he would go, "I'll get it." When I would go to movies or watch television, and watching at the time, Steve Allen's show, I wanted to do what those people did on television to an audience. I mean, they made them happy, they made them laugh, they made them just forget their troubles. So I wanted to do that. I didn't know how. I could have been, I suppose, a funny banker or an amusing tailor or something. But I thought, well, maybe if you got into show business, that would be something. So I bought a tuxedo when I got out of the Army in Seattle, and I went to a nightclub, and I had about 11 jokes that I strung together that were just dynamite. And I showed this guy my act, and he said, "Well, give it a shot." I came in, and my first show was at 5:30 for about 4 people in a trailer. Just a family came in to get a hamburger, and I came out and yelled at them for about 11 minutes, and they just stared at me. So the guy came to me and he said, "Look, you have a tuxedo on. That's good." He said, "Why don't you just, when people come in, seat them?" So I became the maitre d' after the first show. It's interesting that when you go to Disney for a picture, you go to wardrobe and then you meet your animal, because you will be working with an animal. There's no question about that. The World's Greatest Athlete was my first film for Disney. In this particular picture, we were working with a man-eating Bengal tiger.
Get out here! There's a big tiger down here!
There's a reason they call him man-eating Bengal tiger, because they do eat men. So I had an opportunity to sit next to this man-eating tiger for most of the picture. He was trained that if you moved rapidly, he would tackle you by your legs and then kind of gum your neck, which was an interesting thing, because whenever somebody new came on the set, a runner or whatever, you would say, "Could you just run over there and get me a cup of coffee. And then they'd let the tiger go, and he'd knock him down and gum his neck. There was a lot of near heart attacks with people that couldn't take, a joke like that. We were in the front of a car one time. We were supposed to be shooting a rolling shot, and with all those lights in there, and it was also summertime. So it was about 180 in the car. And even though Bengal man-eating tigers are used to a lot of heat, they're not used to a confined area in the backseat of a car. And this particular tiger had on a pork pie hat, a scarf, and a raincoat, because he was disguised as something else. And he seemed a little annoyed. And I said to the director, who was in the safety of the car in front of us shooting, I said, this tiger seems to be a little annoyed with this heat and the hat and the scarf and the coat on. And he said, the trainer said, don't worry. At that, the tiger went, and he ripped out the seatbelt. Now, it takes a lot to rip out a seatbelt, so you know that there's some power with a Bengal man-eating tiger. So I said, could you just stop the car a minute, because I just want to discuss the fact that this tiger is now loose in the backseat. So the trainer came by and he said, I don't understand it, because normally he doesn't do things like this. And I said, well, if you look at National Geographic, there are very few Bengal man-eating tigers you see that have a pork pie hat, a scarf, and a coat on. Perhaps that's irritating you. Gus was a picture of a field goal kicking mule. Now, the storyline alone lends you to believe that maybe you're not going to win an Oscar. So you're just doing the picture because you're doing the picture. But when you're up against things like The Godfather, Cuckoo's Nest, and Gus, the field goal kicking mule, you don't even get rent a tuxedo. I mean, what chance have we got here? I did notice that the trainer only had one eye. And I asked him, sir, how come you only have one eye? And he said, well, in teaching the mule how to, we had a little, but that was early on. So somebody else held the ball while the mule was kicking there. I did Shaggy DA. I'm on the handlebars of a bicycle with a little person in a dog outfit on the back of a bike, pedaling me down the street at 4 o'clock in the morning. And as we're shooting it, I reach back and go like this to the dog. You're doing good. Now the director says, hold it, cut. He said, I don't know, because you're kind of mad at this dog. He said, I don't know whether it would be logical if you would pet his head. I said, excuse me, I'm here at 4 o'clock in the morning with a midget in a dog outfit pedaling me down the street, and you tell me that it might not be logical that I... Get out of here. I always enjoy reading a Disney script because there's usually some action there that really leads you to want to quit the business, in a sense, because you read and it says, my character goes into... Now, the minute you see Pie Factory, Disney had a professional pie thrower come in because these were targeted pies. He had an assistant who would put a pie on his hand. So it's like, pull! And he's throwing these pies at a target. Now, he's doing this for a week. So now we come in to rehearse. Now the director says, here's going to be the scene. Now here's this guy with this assistant again. Now I'm in just street clothes. We're rehearsing, and we're not going to shoot this for weeks. I come to the door, I go over here, and he says, okay, pie. Now this guy goes, and throws a pie at me. We're rehearsing, and I'm going, boom. I go, excuse me, did you notice we're just kind of chit-chatting here? He said, well, I want to make sure I could hit you. Well, I said, it's obvious you can. It's all over my sweater. I think you're wonderful. And it was real cherry pies. Now, further in the script, you go from the cherry pie. Then it says he goes through a paint shop where I am painted orange. Whew. Boy, this is going to be good. So I go to this pie place. I'm driving to try to get away from into a paint shop. Why not? It's on the route. Now, from the paint shop, I go through a pillow factory. And you go, So naturally, I would be covered with feathers. So, a week of pies, then I go through the paint shop. I got to keep all of that on to go through the pillow factory because now I get the feathers stick to the paint. This is 3 weeks of. So I am sitting at 4 o'clock in the morning. We're shooting a scene with the Shaggy DA, and I'm sitting here painted orange with feathers and cherry pie all over, wondering if possibly I'm in the wrong business. The nice thing about doing characters that Don and I do is the fact we don't have to apologize for anything. We don't do things that really offend you. When I was doing the Carol Burnett show, that show was not offensive. We made fun of movies and things of that nature, but never really pointed to anybody and said, oh, you're this? Okay. Well, we're really going to rip you on this one. So I've had a series, and the same with McHale's Navy or anything I've done. It has been a series of gentle humor along the way that I really have enjoyed doing for people, and it sounds like I'm passing away, doesn't it? But I have, and if I did, I wouldn't care because I've completed what I really look to do. I've had a wonderful family life, a wonderful professional life, and I really couldn't ask for anything more except maybe a new pair of shoes.